we get into the backups real quick, the backups should be quick. But the timeline I have, the Texans have a week 6 bye. He's out for 4 weeks. I doubt that they would, unless he's fully ready to go, they'll bring him back before the bye for that one game. That's against Baltimore. I don't think they're bringing Joe Mixon back for a Baltimore game.
No.
After the bye, if I had no answer, no update, if we had no timeline for Joe Mixon, that's the time.
You got to. No, that's nice that it's at least an early buy. And that's a good point because then you can make that decision and it'll be easy to make at that point, especially if you haven't heard anything. Like it's time.
I think Joe Mixon, that's how I would play it, is wait till week 6. If you drafted him already, and I still think it's an okay player to draft at that range.
Yeah.
Because if you miss
as long as you have an IR spot. I wouldn't be drafting him if I don't have an IR spot personally.
Who's the lead back? You got Nick Chubb there. Not who's the lead back. Who's the back that you want in fantasy? Because you got Nick Chubb, who's assuming the starter role. You got Dameon Pierce, who obviously has been a part of this team, had a couple strong showings at the end of last season. And then you got Woody Marks, who's the rookie, who's the guy that they went to go get. Had a strong preseason, Tyler. Which one of these backs are you interested in drafting?
Who do you think I'm going to say?
Woody Marks, of course. You're going to go with the rookie.
Who are you going to say? We already know. Dameon Pierce.
How do we know each other so well, Tyler? How do we know each other so well?
For me, okay, if I want, I'll say this. It depends on your draft, right? Like if you go with a 0 RB strategy, then you could argue Nick Chubb may be the best pick there just because I think he's going to be the lead back. And do I think he's maybe dusty? Sure. But NFL teams have shown they don't really care about that. I mean, look at Ezekiel Elliott last year. He was still getting work until late into the season. They finally moved off of him. Where you could have a situation where, and also I'll say this with Nick Chubb too, he was coming off of a significant injury. So maybe it takes him an extra year to fully get right. And maybe he's not bad this year. So if I look at my running back spot and I'm like, man, I could really use a guy early part in the season to kind of get me through these weeks. And then hopefully these guys will hit, then I think Nick Chubb. But if I'm just going with pure upside, my guy's going to be Woody Marks because I've never been a believer in Dameon Pierce. He's a tryhard. I'm not interested. Also, I do think that there's a pretty big chance that Nick Chubb is unfortunately just dusty. And I love Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb was one of the best at his peak, maybe the best running back pure runner in football. And it's unfortunate, but here we are, it's 2025 and you got to continue to move on. That's just what the NFL does. So with Woody Marks it's interesting too, because the one thing that I'll say is, and they could use Dare in this situation where Dare has been used as a pass catcher because he's solid. I'm assuming.
Oh, Gumbawale, yeah.
He's been used as he's a good third down back in pass pro.
Yep.
So, and I don't know. I'm just assuming that because he's been used in that role before. But Woody Marks could potentially be the third down back because that was one of his calling cards in college. He was a good receiving back. So if he's good in pass pro, there could be a path to him early on to get on the field because Nick Chubb's never been used there. He just never has. Now, maybe Dameon Pierce will be used there. I don't know. But the other thing too is if Nick Chubb is washed and we have Dameon Pierce and we have Dare, there is no way Woody Marks is not the most explosive running back on this roster. He is 100% going to be. Now, does the coaching staff trust him? Will they trust him? I have no idea. But it's one of those things that just, this is the kind of pick that I'd rather take a shot on later in the drafts because it's easy to see after the first couple of weeks. If he's RB4 and he's not seeing any work, then you just move on. But if he is the receiving back on this team, maybe there's path to more opportunities and you'll know that early on as well. So for me, it's Woody Marks and I'm okay with just cutting him loose after the first couple of weeks or first week if nothing happens and just moving on.
I just think Dameon Pierce is going to have opportunity. I get with the Woody Marks thing. It's a flyer. You don't really have to there's no real risk with it. Week 1, you're going to want to pick somebody up anyway. It's probably going to be a free roster spot. I think Dameon Pierce has a little bit of upside in me because maybe he's not the most explosive player on this team, but he also knows this offense. The staff obviously trusts him. He's the number 2 back listed on the depth chart right now. And I know depth chart really doesn't mean shit right now, but for him it does because he was coming into this year as a potential cut candidate. They were talking about moving on from Dameon Pierce. So I think for him, coming off of the injury, he had a decent showing in preseason. I think if Nick Chubb truly is what I think he is, unfortunately, because like you talked about, respect, Nick Chubb was great. If he's washed, I think this team very easily moves on to Dameon Pierce as their lead guy, gives him an opportunity. And then if he falls flat on his face, you're talking about Woody Marks, because I don't think Dare Ogunbowale gets the chance at all. I think he's a special teams guy, and more so, like you said, in the passing game. Dameon Pierce is intriguing to me. He's the one I would probably want. The thing is, I just don't want to roster him. Like I think he's a bad roster
I don't
player,
think
but he's the one I
people will
want.
pick him up. You can just probably, like, one thing that I'll say with him is, and I think this is a key part in fantasy football too. Like I just made a video on this. Like pre-waiver wire moves, like getting ahead of the waiver wire.
Yes.
Like now it's hard after you draft, just because you draft the team and you're like, man, I really like this guy. I don't want to cut him because he could be the best. So it's really hard week one to do something like that. But say week one happens and Nick Chubb is just woefully inefficient. And also the other thing too, not to, like, we haven't really talked about a whole lot. We did with Joe Mixon. This projects to be one of the worst offensive lines in football.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's another thing too, where this could just, nobody is you really want. That's why, like, for me, Woody Marks, just because of like passing game potential there. But like you could happen, week one could come by and you have Nick Chubb rush 20 times for 40 yards. Like, I can't imagine that this team will continue to trot Nick Chubb out there if he's woefully inefficient. And that's where, like, now maybe you stash Dameon Pierce after the first week or two, because, hey, like, there's no way they're going to keep running back Nick Chubb if he's going to be, 18 carries for 30 some yards. So, like, I wouldn't roster him right now, but he's definitely, like, I'm looking at all these except all these pieces and just keeping them on my watch list and just seeing what happens the first couple of weeks. Because once again, we talked about the Browns earlier. Yes, this is going to be a bad offensive line, but anytime you get a starter, like a starting running back in fantasy football, they're valuable. They'll be somebody that can just be a plug and play flex play, especially later in the season, and you get through buys. So
it's weird. It's weird because Nick Chubb is like the one neither of us even want to talk about. It's like, I think.
Well, I don't mind drafting him. I'll say that.
I'm cool of drafting.
I don't mind.
It's just there's no value to me. There's no value unless he scores a touchdown for you. There's just no value.
That's the thing. He could just be the workhorse.
Like,
although I don't think he'll be involved. Like, who do you think is going to be the third down back? Because I don't think it's.
I think this line is going to be so bad. Well, I think Dare Ogunbowale is going to have a chance at that. I think it's Dameon Pierce. He'll be the third down back. I kind of think that, and they'll mix in. No pun intended. They're going to mix in some of the other like backs. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a combination, but I think it's Nick Chubb early downs. I think Dameon Pierce is probably going to get first crack at it. That's why I'm interested, because I think he's one of those players. If week one goes by and we see 8 carries for 40 yards and we see 2 or 3 catches in the passing game for Dameon Pierce, we're going to be like, oh shit, waiver wire pickup of the week. Like, we're going to know, like, as fantasy fans, we're going to know, is Nick Chubb really trash behind this line? Is he just kind of washed? And like, who is the upside play? We're all going to be looking at the Texans backfield for that. So I don't know. That's the reason why I think if you draft him, it's the same thing as Woody Marks. If you see he gets 4 carries and no targets, easiest cut of all time.
Yeah.
Let us know what you guys' thoughts are on this. Before we get into the season talk, we'll be back with some week 1 stuff later this week, potentially. And we'll cover some of the week 1 starts and sits before we get into it. So until the next one, we'll see you guys. Peace out.